Welcome to today's countdown of the top 5 most infamous serial killers in the United Kingdom. These stories are not for the faint-hearted, so be warned. Now let's begin with number 5. Starting off our list are Ian Brady and Myra Hindley, a couple bound together by a shared capacity for unspeakable cruelty. Their crimes from the early 1960s shook Britain to its core. Brady and Hindley, known as the Moors murderers, targeted young children and teenagers. These were not random acts of violence, but carefully planned abductions. Imagine the terror of their victims, lured away with promises of sweets or adventure. The Moors became their macabre graveyard, a place where the boundaries between the living and the dead seemed to blur. The bodies of their victims lay hidden for years, swallowed by the unforgiving terrain. The ruthlessness and cold calculation of Brady and Hindley's crimes sent shockwaves through the nation. The Moors murderers serve as a chilling reminder of the darkness that can lurk beneath the surface of seemingly ordinary lives. As darkness fell across northern England in the 1970s, a different kind of predator stalked the streets. The air was thick with an unspoken fear, and the once bustling neighborhoods became ghost towns as night approached. Peter Sutcliffe, a name that would become synonymous with fear and dread, began his reign of terror. His face, captured in police photos and mugshots, would haunt the dreams of many. Dubbed the Yorkshire Ripper, Sutcliffe's crimes struck at the heart of communities. The headlines screamed of his brutal acts, spreading panic and paranoia. His victims, all women, were chosen seemingly at random, their lives extinguished in a brutal instant. Each attack left a scar on the community, a reminder of the lurking danger. The once familiar streets transformed into hunting grounds, each shadow a potential hiding place for the unseen terror. Panic gripped the region, altering daily routines and instilling a deep-seated fear. Women were afraid to walk alone at night, their every move dictated by fear. The sense of security that once existed was shattered, replaced by a constant state of vigilance. The police, under immense pressure to catch the killer, seemed always one step behind. Their efforts, though relentless, were met with frustration and dead ends. Sutcliffe's evasion of capture for 5 long years only amplified the terror. Each near miss and false lead added to the growing sense of helplessness among the authorities and the public. Sutcliffe's eventual capture in 1981, a seemingly mundane traffic stop, brought a wave of relief across the nation. The news spread quickly, and the collective sigh of relief was palpable. The Yorkshire Ripper case exposed flaws in the investigative process, highlighting the limitations of the police. It led to a critical examination and overhaul of investigative techniques and protocols. Sutcliffe's trial provided a glimpse into the mind of a killer, but offered little solace to the families of his victims. The courtroom became a stage for the unfolding of a dark chapter in history, one that would leave an indelible mark on the collective memory of the nation. Chapter 3. Dennis Nilsen, the Muswell Hill Murderer. Our journey into the dark side of human nature takes us now to the seemingly ordinary streets of Muswell Hill, London. This picturesque neighborhood, with its tree-lined streets and charming homes, hides a dark secret that once shocked the nation. Here, behind the facade of a respectable apartment building, lurked a predator of a different kind. Dennis Nilsen. To his neighbors, he was an unassuming civil servant, but behind closed doors, he was a calculating and cold-blooded killer. Unlike the frenzied attacks of the Yorkshire Ripper, Nilsen's crimes were chillingly intimate. He didn't just kill, he formed a grotesque bond with his victims, a bond that only he understood. He sought not just to kill, but to possess, to hold on to his victims even in death. This need for control and possession drove him to commit acts that are almost beyond comprehension. His flat became a macabre stage for his gruesome fantasies. The cluttered rooms and eerie settings were a stark contrast to the normalcy he projected to the outside world. Nilsson's victims were young men, often drifters or runaways, drawn to his seemingly kind demeanor. They were vulnerable, looking for a friend or a place to stay, and Nilsson exploited this vulnerability with chilling precision. Once inside his flat, Nilsson's true nature revealed itself. The friendly facade dropped, and the predator emerged, ready to enact his dark desires. His victims, plied with alcohol and lulled into a false sense of security, became playthings in his twisted games. The drinks were a prelude to the horror that awaited them. He strangled and drowned them, their deaths agonizing and drawn out. The struggle, the fear in their eyes, was all part of the sick ritual that Nilsson relished. But for Nilsson, death was not the end. The lifeless bodies were kept, sometimes for weeks or even months, as he continued to interact with them in his own twisted way. He kept the bodies of his victims, sometimes for weeks or even months. This grotesque act of keeping the corpses was his way of maintaining control, even over death. Nilsson's capture was almost accidental, a seemingly mundane plumbing issue revealing the true horror of his crimes. The discovery of human remains in the drains led to a shocking revelation that stunned the community. Dennis Nilsson's trial and subsequent imprisonment did little to quell the horror of his crimes. The details that emerged during the trial painted a picture of a man whose depravity knew no bounds, leaving an indelible mark on the annals of criminal history. Chapter 4. Harold Shipman, Dr. Death. Our exploration of Britain's most notorious killers takes us now from the shadows of the underbelly to the seemingly respectable halls of medicine. The world of healthcare, where trust and compassion are paramount, was the perfect cover for a man with sinister intentions. This is the story of Harold Shipman, a man who twisted his oath to heal into a license to kill. He exploited the very trust that patients place in their doctors, turning it into a weapon of unimaginable horror. Known as Dr. Death, Shipman's crimes were a betrayal of trust on an unimaginable scale. His actions sent shockwaves through the medical community and beyond, forever altering the perception of the doctor-patient relationship. He was a family doctor, a pillar of the community. To his patients, he was a trusted confidant, someone they could rely on in their most vulnerable moments. Yet, behind his gentle demeanor and reassuring smile lurked a cold-blooded killer. His ability to mask his true nature allowed him to continue his deadly practices undetected for years. Shipman's methods were chillingly discreet. He didn't need to resort to violence or force. Instead, he used the tools of his trade to carry out his heinous acts. He wielded not a blade or a gun, but a syringe. This seemingly innocuous instrument became his weapon of choice, allowing him to administer lethal doses of drugs to his unsuspecting victims. His victims, many of them elderly and vulnerable, placed their lives in his hands. They trusted him implicitly, never suspecting that their trusted doctor was, in fact, their executioner. Shipman operated for over 2 decades, his killing spree spanning years and claiming the lives of hundreds. His ability to evade detection for so long is a testament to his cunning and the flaws in the system that allowed him to continue. The sheer scale of Shipman's crimes is staggering. The number of lives he took, the families he shattered, and the trust he betrayed is almost beyond comprehension. He is believed to have murdered at least 250 people. Each of these victims had a story, a family, and a life that was cruelly cut short by a man they trusted. The discovery of Shipman's crimes was a slow and painstaking process. It took the dedication and perseverance of investigators to finally uncover the truth and bring him to justice. Shipman's trial and subsequent conviction brought a semblance of justice, but it could not erase the pain and suffering he inflicted. The legacy of his actions continues to haunt the families of his victims and the medical community as a whole. Chapter 5. Jack the Ripper, the Whitechapel Murderer. And now we arrive at the top of our list, the pinnacle of infamy, Jack the Ripper. Unlike the other killers we have discussed, Jack the Ripper remains an enigma. His reign of terror was brief but brutal. His crimes committed in the dimly lit streets of Whitechapel in 1888. The victims, all women, were brutally murdered, their bodies mutilated in a way that suggested a chilling blend of hatred and macabre fascination. Jack the Ripper's crimes were more than just murder. They were acts of spectacle. Despite a massive manhunt, Jack the Ripper was never caught. He vanished as quickly as he had appeared, leaving behind a trail of unanswered questions. Jack the Ripper's story is a reminder that some mysteries may never be solved. And there you have it, our countdown of the top 5 most notorious serial killers in the United Kingdom. These individuals left a lasting mark on history and instilled fear in countless communities. If you found this video interesting, make sure to like, subscribe, and let us know in the comments what other true crime stories you'd like us to cover. Thank you for watching, and remember, sometimes the scariest monsters are not the ones in horror movies, but those who walk among us.